Hello everyone. So in today's video I'll review this book, The Catcher in the Rye. So I've recently finished this last night, and yeah, I thought I'd share my own views and also the whole summary. So this video is going to be two parts. The first is just going to be me rambling about what sort of prose it is, how it's written, what sort of ideas it touches on, and other stuff. And the second part is going to be the whole summary of what happens in short and what symbolisms there are based on different things. So this book is written by J.D. Salinger, and this was written back in 1951, and it explores on this sort of a journal, not really a journal, but it's the main character is Holden Caulfield, who is 16 years old, and you can really tell by the writing that it is a 16-year-old writing the book. And in the book, he goes on about the topic of adults being phony, which basically means fake, and he uses this word phony like a million times. And he also uses a lot of hyperbole in his writing. So it basically is what sounds like a 16-year-old writing. Kind of, it goes through his struggle of going into adulthood. He physically is an adult. He is 16, and in the 1950s, that is basically an adult. And but mentally, he is still a child, and he wants to stay this child. He wants to preserve his own innocence. And when he goes out into this world, he sees other people being adults and being phony, who have lost their innocence. So in his eyes, being an adult, becoming an adult is basically becoming phony. So it's so basically being an adult in his explanation is losing one's authenticity and playing roles. So he goes around and meets with people, and there's a lot of things that I think the book is about 3 or 4 days of his life after he gets expelled from the high school. So, and everyone to him everyone is phony, and he keeps on rambling about it. So first of all, I mean, I did explain a lot, but so if you're thinking about reading this book, you might find it quite hard to read. Not hard to read, you might kind of hate the book because it's written in that sort of way. So it's not the sort of sophisticated prose you usually deal with when reading books. It's written by a teenager who is cynical, but yet he sounds vulnerable, and and yeah, and he also has this edgy thoughts. And he so basically, if you're a teenager reading this, you might relate to him. And well, the book is like this: the main character, we all have that main character in us. On some point of our lives, we were like him. We would complain about being an adult and growing up and seeing that everybody is just fake, and we didn't want to grow up. That's what the main character is going through. He doesn't want to grow up. He wants to stay innocent. He wants to preserve other children's innocence. And that's where the main title of the book comes from, The Catcher in the Rye. I'll get on that a bit later after I start the second part. So this book also deals with alienation. As I've said, that he finds himself in this unauthentic world of adults, which he hates. He hates everyone. And so another part is that the main character, Holden Caulfield, is quite spoiled, in my opinion. Even if you're reading this, he is very spoiled. He comes from a pretty good family. His father is a lawyer, I think, and but still he is spoiled, and he doesn't want to take on responsibilities, and he thinks that those who take on responsibilities are phonies. Basically, he uses this word a lot of times throughout the whole book, and you might find a bit hard to read because the language is totally different. There's a lot of slangs as well, and Yeah, and he writes it, and I mean, it's written in 1951 in the language of what a teenager would sound back then. So it's quite easy to see why it's written like this. But if you're thinking about reading it, I think you definitely should, and I do recommend this book. So you will kind of hate it in the first few pages, but if you kind of understand why the book is written like this, you'll see that you kind of like this character. Well, you'll still hate him because of he is basically a spoiled brat, but you'd relate to him, or depends, you would relate to him some point in your life. It's like that. I definitely recommend you read this book. So now for the second part, which is going to be a summary. So I will not include less relevant parts, but more of the important and a very short summary. Firstly Holden is expelled from his high school, and he goes to New York. And in New York, he gets in this hotel, and while on the way to the hotel, he asks the cab driver for a drink with him, and he says, and the driver declines him, and we can see that Holden is actually very lonely, which is, yeah. So after reaching New York City, he goes to this nightclub where he meets with three older women, and he tries to flirt with them and dance and everything, but it doesn't work out. Then he goes to another nightclub and meets his brother's ex-girlfriend, I think, based on how they talked. And after that, he just goes back goes back to the hotel. And on the elevator boy tells him if he wants a prostitute for the night, and Holden agrees to it. But after the prostitute goes to Holden's room, he decides that he's not going to do the thing, and just decides to talk with the prostitute rather than engaging in sexual intercourse. And it kind of shows that how it shows his innocence, basically. So after that, he does end up paying the prostitute, but the elevator boy comes in and demands more and punches him in the stomach and leaves with the money he had. I mean, not all of it, just what he wanted. Like, it was $10 or something. So after that, he arranged this date with Sally, and which kind of goes disastrously. It ends pretty badly. So at the end, Holden tells Sally that they should run away together to a place and no one knows them and everything, and Sally just calls him a madman and leaves him. After that, Holden doesn't know what to do, and he goes on and he calls he calls one of his old friend, as his senior or something, Carl, and he talks with him, and kind of it shows that Holden is slightly mature. He's quite immature actually, because he talks with Carl about sex and how his sex life is and all those stuff. And after that, it also ends badly. So Holden ends up drinking a lot and getting very drunk. He goes to the Central Park. He's scared that he'll die of pneumonia, and he thinks about his little sister Phoebe, which he loves a lot. And after that, he decides to visit Phoebe. So Holden's home is in New York City. His parents are not aware that he is in New York City. He was supposed to come to their home on Wednesday, but he left early because he's expelled, and his dad's going to kill him because it's his third school which he got expelled from. So he sneaks into his own house, and because he had a spare key, and he talks with Phoebe. Phoebe is very excited, and they have this conversation where we get how the title, the Catcher in the Rye, came to be. It is basically that when Phoebe asks Holden what he wants to be in the future, Holden replies that he wants to be this person who stands on the edge of the cliff, and on the edge of the cliff there is a field of rye, and children are playing in this field of rye, and if the children get too close to the cliff, he will catch them and save them from falling off. Yeah, so basically it shows that he wants to preserve the children's innocence. The falling off the cliff meaning adulthood and losing one's innocence while they're playing on this field of rye where they're all innocent and happy. So after that, um, they talk and they dance together, and Phoebe gives him her Christmas money because Holden spent all of it on alcohol and cab drives. And in that moment, Holden starts crying and Phoebe hugs him. It was a very beautiful moment. So after that, Holden calls his teacher, Mr. Antolini, and goes to his house to stay the night. And here a lot of things are said. Antolini is also worried about Holden's future, and they have quite a long conversation of what awaits for him in the future and all that. So Mr. Antolini and Holden talk quite a lot. Mr. Antolini is concerned about Holden's future, but Holden is very nonchalant about it. He drifts into other thought while Mr. Antolini is talking, and yeah, this happens. And after that, Holden sleeps on the couch for a bit, and he's woken up to find that Mr. Antolini was patting his head, and Holden took it differently, that Mr. Antolini was trying to do stuff to him, in a very non-teacher to student way. So he immediately leaves, giving the excuse that he's going to the train station to get his stuff. So after he leaves, he goes to the train station, he sleeps in the waiting room, he gets his stuff, and then he decides that he is going to run away. He is going to go to some place. He's going to act mute and deaf and probably get a job. He's going to hitchhike his way to the west. He'll just live this life of solitude away from everyone because he hates everyone. He hates their guts. So he thinks like that, and he then goes to Phoebe to tell his goodbyes to her. He writes a note and gives it to the teacher, because Phoebe was in school at that time in the morning, and then tells Phoebe to meet him at the museum. So at the museum, Phoebe comes with all her stuff as well, saying that she's going to leave with Holden and she's not going to let him leave alone. And they get into this argument, and Phoebe gets very angry at Holden for screaming at him. Then Holden takes Phoebe to the zoo. She's still sour at him, and after that they go to this amusement park, and where this carousel is, and Holden buys Phoebe tickets for the carousel. So Phoebe rides the carousel, and so he watches Phoebe at the carousel and he finds peace, and at that moment he kind of accepts that he inevitably has to grow up and that he can't protect everyone from getting into adulthood. I mean, he can't protect anyone. So at the end, it kind of story ends like that. Holden tells us that he could have written more about how he got sick, how he went to a new school and everything, but he decides not to, and that's how the book ends. So that was it. Thanks for watching, and if I did any mistakes, please do tell me. If I did, I'm only human. I am prone to mistakes, so sorry for that. Anyways, have a great day.